taught you that?
My
Can't
mama.
talk. Hey, what is up, Greenhouse Youth? Super excited to be with you tonight. Tonight we are ending our series on relationships. We've been talking all things relationships in a series called You're My Best View. And I'm really excited because tonight we're not just talking with you, but we're actually having conversations. And there's something about conversating and being able to answer even questions that you guys have asked us. So we have Aldrika with us tonight, and she's going to be our lovely moderator, and she's going to kind of be leading this thing and asking us questions. So
Yes, hello. Again, my name is Aldrika Everett. I am a former youth leader from many, many years ago. Y'all don't know me, and that's okay. Again, as Brooke said, tonight we're going to talk about sex and dating and relationships with your wonderful leaders. So we have here Eric with a K, who is a married man with a baby. We have Brooke with an E, your lovely, lovely leader, who is single.
Thank you.
And our student panelist, Ellie Failer, who is also single and going to share all of her insights as a teenager with us tonight. So again, all these questions came from you all via the youth Instagram story. So these are the questions that you all answered, or you all asked, and we're going to answer for you tonight. So just jumping right in, keeping it hot. The very first question, if you all are ready. So, does purity really matter? And what if I know I want to marry that person?
Okay, so I'm going to start off this
okay,
question.
great, you got it.
Go ahead. And my answer to this question is that yes, purity does matter, but probably not for the reason that everyone has told you. So I think that there is a really common misconception in the church or in religion that purity matters because it makes you desirable or makes you like worthy. And that is not why purity matters. Purity matters because God cares about your heart. And purity has a lot to do with how healthy your heart is. So, yeah.
That's good. That's great.
Wow.
Anything you want to add?
From a married perspective, purity does matter when you get married to someone else and you enter into like that when the whoever's marrying you says, all right, you may, and I pronounce you husband and wife, and you guys are, that's the start of your journey to become one. I mean, it even starts before that. There is something about being able to look the other person in the eye and say, hey, we're starting this fresh together. I have no clue what I'm doing, but neither do you, and we're gonna learn. So there's something really cool about that.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I like the part of the question. I think the second part of it was if you know you're going to marry them, then does it matter? And I think that's an excuse we'll hear a lot, and not on purpose, but I think we'll hear people say like, well, I mean, I'm going to marry them, so do I have to wait until I'm married? Like, we know we're going to get married, so we could kind of go ahead and just test the lines. And I think it matters. I think it matters to wait because we talked about it last week. If you weren't here, we talked about the fact that there is the right timing. Like, God didn't just give us all of these rules to be followed, but it's more like a recipe to be followed. Like, if we do it the way he designed it, then we're actually going to be able to fulfill our destiny. But a lot of times we'll do things and we think that God has just put all these restrictions on us. And one of the things we hit on was it's not really restrictions as much as it's a guide and a recipe to be done in the right context. Because if we don't, it could destroy us. So it does matter.
Wow, that's good. Y'all have some great leaders. All right, so next question. Speaking of knowing when to marry, all those things, how soon is too soon to enter a relationship, and when is the right time to date in general? Speaking of timing, who wants to go first?
5 years old is too soon.
For sure.
I think 5 is too soon. My first boyfriend was, I think I was in like 3rd grade or something. I'm serious. What 3rd grade dating is. It's like, oh, let's meet on the playground. Yeah. But how soon is too soon? Ellie, how soon is too soon?
That's a great question. I really do think that a lot of times we look for like very specific answers. We do this with the Bible too. Like, it would be great if the answer was 16, But it's not. I think that it really depends on the person. Yeah, it really depends on the person. Where, like, is your heart ready? Where are you emotionally? Are you independent enough? Where are you spiritually? All of those questions are, really matter. Yeah.
I think if you're asking that question, it's probably too soon. So I think if you're having to check yourself and be like, I'm not sure about this. Like, maybe I'm not ready. You're probably not. Like sometimes when, or not sometimes, when you know, it's almost like, and I know that you might hear this a lot, and I know it might be hard to believe, but when you know, you know. And there's not, that's not just one of the questions that you ask. There's a lot of other questions, but you're pretty sure. So
yeah, I like what Ellie was saying when you were hitting on it's different for everyone because, and this is something we hit on even in the series, is it's when you're even dating, it's not about taking two incomplete people to complete each other, but it's actually about taking two complete people to complement each other, to champion each other. Like that's what relationships are. It's this complimenting and championing. I don't know how you say that right, but you do that in a way like you can't get two people. If you're incomplete, if you're broken, if you're not whole, then it's probably not the right time. So it's definitely different for the individual. Yeah.
That's good. So it sounds like a person needs to have their own personal lives together before they try to enter a relationship.
Yep.
Yes.
All right.
You got your life together, Drika?
Yes. Yes.
right.
Yes, I do. Ooh. I was about to make a joke about y'all older brothers, but I'm gonna leave it alone. All right. So the next question, is it smart to date before you're in a place to go somewhere with the relationship, like being engaged or married or like even go outside with the person?
We got this question in a lot of different forms, I would say, basically asking the timing of dating and all that. So I'm going to let Ellie answer that one too.
Yeah, I would love to answer that question because this was something that I heard a lot growing up in the church, was this concept of dating for marriage, like with the intent of you have to get married. And I do think that there is a lot of truth and value in that concept whenever you're older and you are in a place where you can get married. But because I don't think we as teenagers should be married, it then comes to the question of like, okay, why would you date as a teenager then? And so I would rephrase this concept of, well, we as teenagers need to be dating with a purpose, and that purpose being defined as learning how to connect with people, learning how to try new things, like go out of your comfort zone, talk to people, maybe people that you wouldn't talk to, learning how to be on a team with someone, like partnership, learning how to sacrifice, be a little bit selfless. Relationships require a lot of you, actually, to like lay down some of your wants for other people. So all of those things are really, really important to learn as a teenager, and you have to learn at some point so that you can be really good at dating to find your life partner when you're older. And you can't skip that piece. Or you can, but you're going to have a lot of issues later on in life. So if you're afraid of dating because you feel like, oh, well, I'm not going to marry them, don't let that turn you off to getting to know people and to choosing to like go out on dates with people. Just very like casual stuff you have to learn how to do. It's a good life lesson. Yeah, that's my answer.
Ellie is light years ahead.
She is. I'm like, I wish I knew that when I was her age.
Yes.
seriously.
Of myself and probably most teenagers. So if you guys don't know her, you should become her friend and learn lots of things from her.
I love friends. You should be
But
my
do you all
friend.
have, Brooke, Eric, do you all want to kind of weigh in on that? Any input?
Well, I mean, the whole series has been You're My Best View. And so I think Ellie was hitting on that. You have to have the right view and perspective. Like when it comes to, like I love you were giving examples of why we should date. And what we talked about before is the reason why we're even doing this whole series together is because it's not talked about enough in the church. A few times Ellie has mentioned, well, this is what I thought. Like I heard this in the church, is what I heard. And we even talked before how like where it says in the Bible, my people were destroyed because of lack of knowledge. And our goal is to give knowledge and wisdom. And I love what you're saying. Like we have to have this right view of relationships before we can enter it. It is about serving other people. It is, and so we have to also know what culture says about relationships.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
because we're answering this question and we're saying, hey, is dating okay? And Yeah, for teenagers, I think it's different for every person, but the purpose of a relationship culturally is not the same what it is biblically. So I love it
right.
when you hit
That's a good
on
point,
there
yeah.
has to be a purpose. There does have to be a purpose, and the purpose that's going to give life is going to come from life itself, which is Jesus and his purposes and his ways. And so that's why we want to, Jesus didn't just say, he didn't just tell us to do stuff and not give us directions on how to do it. We actually have his word in his Bible to help guide us through it also.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing really quick, just to answer the question kind of directly. It's probably not smart, and the reason why is waiting while you're patient, not waiting like oh my gosh, but waiting while you're patient actually will confirm whether or not you're supposed to be in that relationship or not be in it. If you just wait and get to know them, maybe you'll find out some great things about them, and it'll confirm that you should be with them. Or maybe the opposite, and it'll confirm that you shouldn't be with them. So probably not smart. Probably not smart.
And that doesn't mean, and Ellie hit on it, let's be clear, that does not mean that if you're dating in high school that it's like, oh, we have to be engaged in a year or married.
Yeah,
But it does
don't
have to
get
mean,
married at 18,
yeah,
please.
please don't do it super early. But
Right.
what it does mean is like, hey, we actually do have to think through, we're going to do this with a purpose. Here's
Yeah.
the purpose. I don't know what the purpose is. In everything we do, we want to glorify the Lord.
Yes.
That's our purpose. And everything we do, we want to glorify the Lord. And so you could do that. I know a lot of couples who have dated in high school and they did make it and they did get married years on out, but they had a purpose in their relationship. So I think that was a huge thing.
That's great.
That's good. So that was actually another question was, is it pointless to date as a teenager? So I think you all have kind
Yeah,
of
I kind of answered that.
Yeah,
then.
for sure. So then let's get to some more of the heavy-hitting questions. So how far is too far? And when can I kiss? How far is too far? Let's start there.
What kind of kiss? Like a peck or?
I don't know if they specified on the Instagram story. Let's start with the first one. How far is too far?
Okay, I'll start on it. I think that this is the wrong question, and we've said this a lot of times. Even throughout the series, this is not the right question. If you're asking this question, then you're probably already not going into the relationship for the right reasons. Like you're probably going in for intimacy more than for purpose, and you're trying to probably fulfill a personal desire more than a selfless act of getting to know each other and champion each other and compliment each other. So the question that we do need to ask when we're dating is, will this bring me closer or further from God? And I think that's a great question when it comes to boundaries or what should I do. I think that for everyone, it is going to be a little bit different, but I would say if you can make out with your significant other alone and not go further than that, then that's probably a problem in itself. So
I don't know if that's healthy.
So I'm just saying, like, there are some boundaries that you need to have because you're probably dating them because you're attracted to them in some way.
I would hope so.
Yeah, there's a lot of attraction.
Don't date if you're not attracted to
Yeah,
them.
like I do think you should be attracted to the person you're dating. I do think, the Lord's given us those things, like these desires and all this. So there will be a physical attraction. And so, Satan has done a really great job, though, at making us believe that God is always keeping us from something, right? Like, I mean, since the garden, he's done that where he gave permission for a lot of things. He's like, yes, don't go there. And it felt like he was a restrictive God, like he was against them. And this is the same thing when it comes to boundaries. I think people are always like, man, like this is such a hard topic in Christianity. It's like Satan, he's restricting me. Like now, God, you're so selfish. And he'll make us believe that God's selfish and we're missing out and we're holding back on those things. So I think we have to figure out, one, how we are wording the question. And then, if you two want to chime in on some stuff too about it.
Yeah, just to, go ahead.
You go. I'll go
All right. Well, just to go right off of that, our body was made, to experience things like kissing and on and on. But, and so like if we're shy people or if we're like innately just not like PDA oriented, our body was actually made to bring our walls down and to let us enjoy those things, but in the right time. So, I don't know how many of you guys skate or do things like that. I don't know if you guys have ever skated or longboarded down a hill, but once you get closer to the bottom of that hill, it's hard to stop. you know? So it's like when
deep.
yeah, when you start kissing, it's like you got to be ready to like, you know, prepare yourself, because it's just harder to stop the further you get down the hill. And, you know, and if you, like me, don't know how to skate right, and I busted my face the first time I longboarded down a hill. And then I quickly learned, you know, in past relationships as well, like it just doesn't go anywhere great if you don't have any self-control, which 99% of you guys probably don't. You know, I mean, I'm just gonna be honest. Like, it's from people that I've talked to or seen, it's not something, self-control isn't something we're great at from the jump. And so
I think Jesus does hit on, I did want to read a verse in Matthew 5:28. Jesus is hitting on looking at someone lustfully. And so I think like this is like he wouldn't have brought this up if we didn't have a lust problem. And so clearly there's something when it comes to even this question. It's not just like physically, but where are our thoughts going with the person you're dating or you want to date? It's about having purity in your thoughts, having boundaries in all areas, because even kind of I was saying earlier, like Satan will take things and he has a way of making freedom look like slavery. And purity is actually freedom. Like purity is like, it is this freedom to say like, I'm not going to do that. And this is what Paul had kind of even mentioned when he was talking to the church in Corinthians. But what Satan will do is he'll be like, nope, that's slavery. And he'll hey, Eve, is like, will you really die if you eat that fruit? You know, that's what he says. And that's what we hear all the time. Like, will something really go wrong if I choose to go too far, if I don't have these boundaries? But I would love to hear what you have to say about it, Ellie.
Yeah. So I think the second part of the question, correct me if I'm wrong, was like, when is it okay to kiss?
Yes.
Yes, is that what that was? Okay. So I'm just guessing that a guy asked this question. I'm just guessing. So
We don't know that.
Yeah, if you are like in like a good, healthy place with you know, your little boo or whatever, then my answer, genuine answer to this question would be like, at least my rule is it's okay to kiss someone after you've held her hand. So I feel like that's a pretty good rule. But in terms of the first question of like how far is too far, going with what you're saying about it being the wrong question, I was thinking about how this question is it's kind of just asking like how much of, like how can I get what I want? Like how close can I get to what I want before it's like wrong or whatever? And that is a very secular way to view relationships, or a cultural way to view relationships are for getting what I want, and they're not. At least the ones that last are not about that. So
that's right.
Yeah,
that's good. All right, so another hard-hitting question, very important topic, you guys. I need you to prepare yourselves. Who says I love you first, the guy or the girl?
Oh my gosh.
They ask. They need to know. Let them know, people.
It's the person who gets their dinner paid for first. I love you. Thank you for buying me dinner.
So the girl got it.
Yeah, the girl should definitely say it first.
What?
No, I'm just
Who asked this question?
Who asked this?
Come on, guys.
Question back to you.
Come
Who
on.
asked?
Just say it. No.
Who asked this? But so who
I think the root
yes.
of that question is pride. Because if someone's saying, oh, who should say it first? I do think in relationships, you have to, in some ways, there are roles for sure when it comes to guys and girls. Expressing feelings as far as like, if you're already dating, I personally wouldn't say, oh, it has to be the guy, it has to be the girl. I do think, though, and this is just a personal thought, I do think that there is a way in which girls are to be pursued in relationships.
Yes.
So when I do say there are roles, I do agree that, like, I think a girl shouldn't go up to every guy and be like, hey, you know, I think you're cute and I want to date you. I do think there is, as Christ pursued the church, there is a way in which girls, you have this trust and like, hey, I'm going to have someone who is bold enough, who's Christ-like, who's going to pursue me. Now, when you're already in a relationship, as far as like expressing feelings, I wouldn't say there's a big like, oh, you can't express this until they do this. Like that's more so like that's why I said I think pride is in there. Like, oh, I don't know, because you also want to make sure you're on the same page in your relationship. If you're already going like too far in your feelings and emotions, maybe you're already in a spot where like you might need to pause that relationship if you guys aren't at the same level in sense. So
Can I was going to say, can I ask a better version of this question? Unless you
for it.
want to
Please.
go
No,
ahead
no,
and
no.
read.
Go for it.
When do you know you're ready, or when is a good time to say I love you to your boyfriend or girlfriend?
Well, what I was gonna say was if you are genuinely asking this question, I think your words are very important, and like I think we all kind of feel like, oh, that's a big statement, and it is. And so, when are you ready? I feel like since I've been there, I feel like you'll know. And I know that sounds vague, and it's probably not the answer you want, but there is just a sense of like, oh man, I know who you are, I know what you're about, and I know our purpose in this relationship and where we're going, the direction that we're headed, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
And
I would say I don't think it's when you feel it. I would say
Yeah.
it's not,
Yeah.
because
That's a
it's
good
not
point.
a feeling as much as it is an action. And what
That's right. Yeah,
Jesus
that's
did
really
when
good.
he loved us was he was acting it out. Like, do you really want to serve this person? Do you really think of them above yourself? Do you consider them? If those are like, yes, those are indicators of that thing, then I think then you probably are in a place where you do actually love them. But we have to define love the
Yeah.
right way, and not how culture has defined it, which is like, oh, I have these strong feelings towards you. Because if you go into a relationship defining love the wrong way, you're going to actually stay in that relationship defining the wrong way. You could get married defining it the wrong way, and there's going to have ripple effects that are going to end. So you have to first know what like love actually is before you could answer
right.
that.
So I was just going to say, I don't know if your guys' generation is like this, but in my generation, it's very, very common to say I love you all the time to all your friends, always. Like,
I think we are like this too.
okay, cool. And
Probably
and
thinks we're boomers.
no, it's not. We're like basically the same age.
Not
But-
okay, boomer.
No. What I mean by that, though, is I do think that maybe the term I love you has become devalued, and so we need to redefine it. My advice would be, as a teenager and as a human who holds on to words, don't say things that you don't mean. And don't say promises that you can't keep, stuff like that. Like the Bible says, let your yeses be yeses and your noes be noes. So those are just like simple guidelines as to don't just say something because you feel it in the moment, because people hold on to that, and I have to tell myself that all the time. I hold on to people's words a lot, and that can be really hurtful. And so I need to be really cautious of the words that I choose to give other people because they hold on to them. So if you're really in the business of protecting someone's heart or like wanting to be in a relationship with them, then mean what you say.
That's good. Mean what you say.
So I know this isn't necessarily one of the questions, but I think you have said it, but because these are teenagers who we care about, we want them to fully understand this whole series. Can we just take a second to even define what love is then? If we're saying, hey, it's not a feeling, say what you mean. If they don't even know what it means, so how do they know that they're experiencing it? So biblically, what is love, and what did God intend for, I guess, even relationships, intimate relationships in that way? Like, what is love, actually?
I'll let someone else go, but I want to say it is not only physical. Like the physical side of things is one ingredient of love. And there's a way that Jesus showed us that love by like taking his own body on the cross for us. And so physically, he showed us how to love. But when it comes to, like it can be really easy when you're physically kind of, getting going with someone, and then you want to say, oh, I love you. But that's just that. If we define love, how the Bible defines love, the physical side of it is only one piece, one ingredient.
Yeah.
The Bible does define love, and I think that we hear it so much that we don't take these words very seriously. But it does say that love is patient, it is kind, it doesn't envy, it doesn't boast, it's not proud, it's not rude, it's not self-seeking, it's not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs, it doesn't delight in evil, but it rejoices with truth, it always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. And it goes on to say a lot of things, but I think even when we're thinking about love, and I remember I read this in Crazy Love, Francis Chan's book, and it kind of like rocked my world in some ways. I was like, can you replace that with your name? Like, are you even a loving person? Can I say Brooke is patient? Brooke is kind. Brooke doesn't envy. She doesn't boast. And when you go through and you think about it, love, it's not selfless, and it's not just an individualistic thing. We love because he first loved us.
Yeah.
So we receive love from the Father, and love is something that is received. Love is something that was done for us by Jesus, his life. So that's why I said earlier, love is an action in a lot of ways. It's not a feeling. It's something that's firm. It's a rock. It does not move, even when you're not feeling it. When you're mad at a person, like love is like unmovable in some ways. And love is like, this is not just the Christian answer. Like, love is Jesus, and that's why we have to know who he is and what the gospel is, and how it is completely countercultural. It's not about satisfying my needs. You actually know you love someone when you're willing to do whatever it takes to satisfy theirs and to serve them. For the Son of Man did not come to serve or to be served, but to serve others. Like, that is love. When you actually could be like, oh, I really would. You know, I've thought this. I think we all think random thoughts in our head before. Like, would I lay down my life for someone? Like if you're at a place where you genuinely would be like, yeah, I would do anything for them. Like, that's love. It's selfless. It's not about satisfying your own desires.
That's good. Youth, you now have no excuse.
Come on.
Also, Albert, if you're watching, I love you.
Oh, she'll lay down her life for you, Albert.
I would. Anyway. All right, so now back to dating. What do you all think is the biggest struggle with teenage dating? Ellie, I'm going to start with you. What do you think is the biggest struggle?
I'm a teenager. I think you could go multiple different routes, but I guess I'd say all the gross stuff, like puberty, hormones, all of that. I think that if I'm going to speak personally, sorry, someone's calling me. If I'm going to speak personally, from my experience with dating and being a Christian and being a teenager, I think it's really hard to grow up in an environment that doesn't recognize female sexual desire as much as it does male. So it causes a lot of...
She about to drop some knowledge.
So
Listen.
So it causes a lot of, already as a Christian, you're like, oh, I shouldn't be thinking those things. I shouldn't be feeling those things. But even more when it's like you hear like, okay, and if you're a guy, you need to come up and like you need prayer for your thoughts or whatever, but like you're not included. You're like, oh man, something's really wrong with me. And it's not. It's
Wait,
just,
so you're saying girls struggle too?
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
I know. But it's almost like we have very similar brains and very similar feelings and thoughts. I just don't think it's talked about as much. Yeah. So I think that's really hard to be a teenage Christian girl and just feel maybe like your sins aren't as represented as other people's or taken care of. But yeah. Maybe come back to me. Someone else can go, and I'll read back.
Well, my first thought is culture is the biggest hard with teenage date. The hardest thing I think with teenage dating is because I would guarantee that most teenagers have learned how to date culturally way before they ever did biblically, and I think it's hard. Like, I think even as parents, like. Parents will try their best they can, but you're just learning so much, You're going to learn from the Kardashians how to date before you are from Jesus. Like, you're going to learn from, Outer Banks. You're like, yes, that's my relationship. But you're going to learn from these things, these shows, these Instagram, TikTok. Like, that's how we're learning. And so I think the biggest struggle is when someone drops something like what Jesus said. This is what the problem in the Bible. When Jesus would say things that weren't culturally meeting things, it was like, wait, who? Like, it seems like there's no way you could do that, almost like it's impossible. So I think the biggest struggle with teenage dating is being different, being holy, being set apart, because we don't want to be different. We don't want to be, and we think that it's wrong if it's the other way around. Like, I think that we think, if you're a teenager, you're like, you feel exactly what we were talking about earlier. You feel like restricted, like I'm missing out because culture has so told us otherwise. And so I think that that's one of the hardest struggles is being just engulfed in that constantly. And then, you know, if you do decide that, when I was in high school, the grace of God, I went to youth group like a handful of times, and they said don't have sex before marriage. And I dated someone all throughout high school, and I was like, nope, I'm not allowed to have sex before marriage. And I was being ridiculed for it, but I wasn't even like really a Christian. Like it was just the Lord's like blessing over my life in that part. But yeah, I think that culturally it's crazy. You know, even when I was in 8th grade, I said, my goal is when I graduate middle school that I already want to have sex. That was a goal of mine. So I could only imagine how it is now when I didn't even have social media, like we didn't have Netflix, we didn't have any of those things. So I know it's only 10 times harder.
Yeah.
I think one of the struggles is friendships and friend circles and the people that you surround yourself with. And I would bet that a lot of the people that we're friends with that are not in the church, or maybe if you're watching and like you don't normally come, the relationships that, just like Brooke was saying, like our culture tells us how to do relationships one way, but God kind of tells us how to do relationships differently. But most of our friends probably do it differently and probably don't encourage us to follow things God's way. And it's just hard. We want to be liked. We want to be loved. We want to show our friends that we have someone that loves us, that kind of like buys us nice things and cares for us. And we want to be able to post about it. We want to be able to have those like cute posts and get all the likes and the followers, and like kind of, we want to be recognized. And I think God's way of doing relationships is actually not wanting yourself to be recognized, but wanting to recognize the other person. And I think
and for him to be recognized, like it's for his glory. So there should be something about us like sticking out, and we're humans, like we have desires. So if you have these desires, but then you're with a bunch of people and you can't actually put these desires forth, that's what's hard. Like when you said friendship, Eric, I was like, oh, that's so true. It's like if you were an alcoholic and you only hung out with a bunch of people who drank all the time, and I was like, oh, but I know I'm not allowed to do that. Like we have these desires within us, like, because it is like sex is good. It is a gift from God, but it has to be done within the certain time and context. So when you're surrounded by friends that are already doing it when they shouldn't be and stuff, it makes it 10 times harder.
And you're exactly what you're saying along with like the whole alcohol thing. I used to work at an alcohol rehab center, and I mean, the only way that you stop drinking alcohol if you're an alcoholic is to not be around people who are drinking. You can be with other alcoholics, but they shouldn't be drinking. They should all be in recovery. You know, it's like if you don't even know anything else aside from, oh, sex is okay, then you're never going to know that like there's actually something out there that's better.
Yeah. I just wanted to say one more thing. It came to my mind. I think that there's a lot of like glorification of relationships, and especially in high school, probably in middle school too, like how great it is to have someone like you, and that is great. But being a teenager, like it's just like, it's very formative you're trying to solidify your identity, who you are, and it's really easy to get mixed up in everyone else's desires. Like actually you have your own passions and your own goals in life, and it's really easy when you like someone or when you're so obsessed with dating and relationships and boyfriends and girlfriends to just lose track of that and get caught up in that world. Get caught up in the world of like that kind of desire instead of like, oh, like I have ambitions and there are other things to accomplish in life. I've been there before. Where that's like all I can think about is being in a relationship. And so if anyone is just like sitting there thinking like, oh yeah, I can't stop thinking about like having a boyfriend or whatever. Like I've been there, but also like I just want to let you know that there are other things. And like dating and in teenage years is hard too. Like it's all hard, but there are other good things out there to focus on and direct your attention to. So
that's great.
Yeah.
No, that's good. All right, so next question. What should you do if you want to date, but you know it's not the best timing?
Don't date.
Don't date.
All right, Eric?
Don't date.
That's it?
If you know, you know.
All right, next.
Trust yourself.
Wait, I just have one cute little thing, sorry. My mom always says, if it's the right person and the wrong time, it's still the wrong person. So we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I think that's great. You have to trust the process. So it could be the right person, but if the timing is wrong, then you're going to end up destroying a relationship that maybe God meant for good and it should have been blessed. And that's why we should be asking God, what are you blessing, instead of jumping into things and being like, God, please bless this. A lot of times it's like, hey, God, like, I'm going to date him and he doesn't even know you, but please bless it. And that's not the way to go. Rather, it's like, hey, Lord, what are you blessing? What do you want me to do? And then it will be blessed if we walk in that direction. So,
Amen.
Sweet.
All right, so next question. What's a deal breaker in a relationship, or what are deal breakers?
ungodliness.
Putting the toilet paper the wrong way on the toilet paper roll.
They shouldn't be in your house putting on your toilet paper roll, so next.
Sorry, I'm married. I mean, it's like
I was like, that's all I could think of.
leaving dishes in the sink. Ugh. Sorry.
So, let's explain. What is a deal breaker?
I think a lot of times we are interested in people before we start, actually dating, that weird phase that we don't have a name for it. Oh, you're talking to that person, whatever it is. And we're trying to evaluate, is this the person that I want to date? Do I like them? I don't know. So I think in that process, there should be some deal breakers. Like, I don't think you need a list of check, check, check. But I do think there should be, hey, listen, I just noticed that, for me, a deal breaker is if they aren't servant-hearted. I think that is the root of love in a lot of ways. So I'm if they're not willing to serve and they don't have this, then I don't even know how much of the heart of Jesus they have yet. They just haven't arrived. We're all made in God's image, and at some point we do all have potential, but the question is, you're not looking at potential, you're looking at where they actually are now. And so I would say, for me, it's definitely, that would be one of them, but in general, it's just godliness. Do they really love the Lord? The greatest command, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, your strength. And you could tell if sometimes it's I don't want to date a godly person. That godliness seems unattractive. It is attractive to people who are godly, though.
Yes.
Godliness always seems unattractive culturally, but it is always attractive to someone who is godly. And if you have that trait and that quality, I think that's a huge thing. And if you don't, I think it's, hey, they just need time.
That's good.
Yeah.
I want to give you two quick practical answers. One, at a base level, the Bible says to not be yoked with an unbeliever. So if you follow Jesus and you call yourself a follower of Jesus, the best thing to do would not be to rush into a relationship with someone who does not follow Jesus. And then on a real practical level, one thing that I always look for is, are they the same person around me that they are with their friends?
Yeah, that's great.
And if they're putting on different faces in front of different people, even if they claim to follow Jesus, even if they claim to be a Christian, but they're just different around different groups of people, that's kind of a red flag. So
Yeah. Who are they behind closed doors?
yep.
So, another question, sub-question. Should everybody have these non-negotiables? Should everybody have deal breakers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As
you
long as
should
they're
have
reasonable,
standards,
yeah.
expectations.
Yeah, have some expectations, have some standards.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
You value yourself.
Yes, reasonable standards, people. That's all I wanted you guys to say.
I wanted to piggyback off of what you were saying about being unequally yoked. First of all, I have been in a place in my life where I have dated someone who's not a Christian, and I was very hurt because we were unequally yoked. So I'm just saying that happens, and it does not work out in most cases. And that's not because they were a bad person at all. That's just because our hearts were in different places. And that's really just not the will of God. The second thing about being unequally yoked is not do you call yourself a Christian and are they a Christian? Your deal breaker should not be, are they a Christian? It really should be, do they have a relationship with God? And do they have a heart for other people? How do they act whenever they think no one else is watching? And stuff like that. It shouldn't just be oh, he's a Christian, it's fine. Or oh, she's a Christian, it's fine. Because that is still unequally yoked if they don't have a relationship with God.
Oh, it's true. Because there's I think 87% of people mark that they're Christians. And then of that, there's...
And when you point the finger, there's 3 more pointing back at you. So if you call yourself a Christian, but you're not, then you might not be ready.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. All right, so... Ellie, you mentioned this earlier, but I would love for all of you to chime in, especially you, Eric, because you are a married man now. So it took you a minute to get to place of marriage. How do you stay content while single? Whoever wants to go first.
By looking to Jesus.
What does that mean?
No, so though I think contentment is it's a funny thing. The world has a way of making us think we have missed out on a lot of things. The world has made us think like if you are not single, no, if you are single, then you're missing out. So relationships have been idolized. Aldrika and I did a whole singleness summer strides class, so we talked about this topic a lot. But what I think what ends up happening is when you are discontent, you're focusing on the absence. But when you are content, you're focusing on the abundance. So when I was saying, hey, like, look at Jesus, I think the solution to discontentment is focusing on Jesus. If it was like a one-word thing, let his grace wreck you. When you are marked by God's grace, it will change everything. So you'll go from discontentment to contentment. But when you are discontent, what you're doing is you're focusing on what you don't have. This is problem since the garden. We talked about it. Eve was focused on what she didn't have, and it caused her to long for that thing, and she was discontent. And it's wild because she actually had access to the entire garden and had access to all the other things. And so contentment would be focusing on the abundance, whereas I think discontentment would be in this place where you're just so set on looking at what you don't have, the lack of. And we have so much. We have so much in God. Paul says we could actually learn contentment, though. So what he says is he knows the secret. He says, I have learned what it's like to be content. That's what Paul says. So there is this learning, and if I had to guess what the learning was, when Paul's talking about that, he's talking through all the things Christ brought him through. His learning of contentment was seeing God's hand in his life. And that's why I say I think contentment happens when you actually realize the grace of God. We have just lacked a ton of gratitude culturally, myself included, of even remembering daily, like the grace that God has given me. And when you are marked by that grace and you remember, it changes everything. But contentment always has a way of showing itself in circumstances. And, and I shared this in our Summer Strides class. I was like, hey, I went to Kenya. And I remember when I was in Kenya, I was perfectly content with the clothes I packed for those 3 months, and I was great, and we were good to go. But the second I got back, it was like, oh, I wanted the newest clothes, and I was like, what? Like, my contentment level changed based off of the place where I put myself. So there is this, where you're placing yourself is going to determine where your contentment is. And so that's one part of it. I could talk about it for an hour. So.
Well, so you made me think of what Ellie had said earlier. There's so many other things that you can focus on other than relationships while you're single. There's so many other things. And so I think we just glorify relationships and all the benefits of it. But, then there's also like the not so, like there's the hard work of relationships. Like being married is a lot of work. It's worth it, but it's a lot of work. And it's not my recommendation that you just find all the bad things about marriage and then that's your reasoning for being single. But what I would say is this: trust God's track record. Like I grew up in a Christian household where I learned kind of how God said to do family and marriage and all of those things. And from a young age, I thought it was so cool that my parents were married and they would take vacations and all the different things that you get to do as a family. It made me want my own family. But as I got to see other friends and their parents and how they were raised, you get to see kind of like the not so great side of all of that. And then you also get to see the good side. You end up learning over time that the way that God says to do things just works. And so like the way that he's always kind of instituted all of those dynamics, it just works. And so I think the way to stay content is to trust that God has the best for you. If you just let him speak to you, let it be patient and let him work.
It's making me think that contentment, it's not a place that you reach, but it's a place you rely. You don't ever reach contentment. It's not like, I finally made it, I'm content. Because you're content one day and the next day it's like, oh shoot. Like it's a constant relying. You don't reach contentment, but you rely on it every single day on God's grace. And we have to be constantly relying on him. So
yeah. I think there's a verse in the Bible, I'm pretty sure, that says like to set your mind on things above.
Yes,
which
Colossians
means that
3.
Yeah, which means that naturally your mind falls on things that are eye level, and so you have to consistently set your mind to be content. Yeah, I'd say some of my greatest periods of growth with the Lord, some of my most fun memories have been when I was single. yeah. So just appreciate that. It's a good period of life to be in, and you'll be in a relationship, and that's a good period of life to be in, and you'll fluctuate in and out of that, and all of those seasons are good. Yeah.
These are great.
Man, there's so many good questions left. All right, how do we do a lightning round of the last 4 questions?
We
Can
still
we
have
do
4
it?
questions?
Yeah,
All
can
right,
we do-
this has
Let's
gone
do
long,
it.
so we'll do super,
Well, there's
super
more, but I'm
fast
gonna only
lightning
ask
round.
4.
All right, let's
All
do
right,
it.
lightning round. The first one, is there such thing as the one?
You choose the one. Love is a choice.
I like
No.
that answer.
No, there is not.
Yeah.
Because that would have been messed up already.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, if there was the one, then the whole universe would already be messed up because we know
Yeah.
people done messed up. So
Right. What does it look like to be accountable in a relationship?
Get to a place where you understand that your actions affect others. Everyone should be like that, whether you're in a relationship or not.
Accountability never happens in isolation. You got to surround yourself with people.
there it is.
All right. How do I deal with the lies that something is wrong with me because I am single?
Jesus was single and Jesus was complete.
Let's go.
And nothing was wrong with Jesus.
Nothing was wrong with Jesus. All right. Okay, 2 more. How do I deal with the grief of heartbreak in relationships?
You deal with it to an extent, and then the Lord takes care of the rest.
The Lord is close to those who are brokenhearted.
Yeah. Embrace it in the sense of go through the process, whatever the Lord's teaching you, weep. It's okay to be upset. It's okay, but don't stay in that place. Like,
Yeah.
go through the process. Weep, pray, get around community, and figure out what the Lord taught you in that. And yeah.
Just because this is something I've actually been thinking about personally with some friends of mine and stuff. You need to have boundaries even after you break up. So to be able to deal with that heartbreak and process those feelings, you've got to have some healthy boundaries. And we won't get into that now, but you need to do all that with some good boundaries.
All right.
good.
And the final question. Should I have boundaries with the friendship of the opposite sex?
Yes.
Yes.
100%.
Tell me what those look like.
What
Real
I
quick.
always say is I will never have a relationship with the opposite sex that I would have to change when I started to date someone.
Bingo.
So if I become friends with someone, if I have been texting them too much, talking to them too much, and I know that if I were to date someone else, they would feel uncomfortable with that, then that's a relationship I have to change, and that's not fair to me or the person. So a very easy guideline is I never want to change any relationships when I start dating someone. So I want to make sure I already have boundaries now. So if someone's texting me a lot, I've had really close guy friends who text a lot and I just don't respond because I'm like, I don't want this to get to a point where I'd have to shift this relationship. And because that causes division. We know what it's like when you date and it's like, why don't you talk to me anymore? Like we used to be, like you should not be best friends with the opposite sex. It's just not going to work out. It's not good for you. It's not healthy for the person that they're potentially going to date. There's a lot of things that get messy in that. And so, and plus you have like, I love my friends that I'm super close and intimate with, that are girls, like God gives us as friends. So.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you all tonight. Hopefully, y'all learned at least one thing today. If not, I don't know. I'll come visit you.
You might have
at
to
youth.
rewatch the video. Go back and just like take your time.
Take notes. or
Yeah, we
something.
hope you took notes. We know this was a long time, but it was totally worth it. And everyone, give it up for Aldrika for
Come
hosting
on.
us, and Ellie and Eric. And you're gonna have some time, you and your Green Crews, to talk a little bit about this. But we love you guys. We had a lot of fun talking through this, and keep the conversations going. That's why you have Green Crew leaders and friends around you. Keep these conversations going because we want to make sure that we get the best view, which is Jesus. So we love you
Amen.
guys. Hope
Amen.
you have a great night.
Good night.
Peace.
Like 30 minutes has been our longest video, like actual video. No, it's okay. I didn't.